I think everybody should freelance on some level. Freelancing is such a rich, challenging experience. I wanted to write this book because books like this have been so impactful to me early on in my career. Trust is the real thing that's going to get you the call back. It's the thing that's going to help you charge more without you even trying. It's like, what do I feel the tug on my heart to do right now? How can I help somebody right now? I didn't really feel like there was a book that I found that was written directly for freelancers and for that business model. Trying to keep my own faith, I've understood how difficult it is. We don't believe the same things, but like I see you. And like, I know what you're going through. Slowly and strangely, I started to discover myself having real friendships with people that I worked with. There are so many rich relationships to be had, not in spite of business, but because of business. Before I wrote this book, it was like almost a sickening weight upon my shoulders. I could feel it in my throat almost, where like I came to the moment where I realized I need to write this book. And it's going to be really hard.
What does it mean to you specifically to be creative?
Good question. To me,
Duncan is on his third streak. Duncan, get in here. Duncan, we're rolling. Do you want to do it? No way. This is Duncan's third episode in a row that he's going to intro. Go for it, bro.
What's up, guys? I'm Duncan. Welcome to Creative to Create with Ben and Reese.
Yeah!
I got it right this time.
It's beautiful.
He almost got the name wrong on the last one.
It's beautiful.
It's become a ritual here. But you never know. I mean, when you live with a bunch of guys, you never know who's going to walk through the door.
Of
so
course.
I've kind of just given up, like,
of
trying
controlling
to
the
control
environment.
it. And,
You accept
no
it.
chance. This is the living room. It's the best place to do it, but
Yeah.
you got to live with the consequences, you know?
Yeah. I heard a quote recently. I don't know who to attribute it to because a friend said it, but it was perfection is fragile, but excellence is flexible. You have a ton of excellent roommates, and it's flexible. They come in and they make it better.
I like that a lot. Text that to me later.
Okay, sure thing.
I'm going to like post that somewhere.
Sure.
Or not post it, but
let's
like,
try to
put it
find who
somewhere.
actually said it.
Let's do that. Let's attribute the credit where it's due.
Or maybe my friend made it up. Who knows?
He could have.
Yeah.
Hey, if so, props.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have you on though.
It's great to be here.
Dude. We got to play golf soon again.
Yes. Yes.
We have to.
Super down.
Reese and I are golf buddies whenever we're in town. It's kind of hard to like corroborate the schedule.
Yeah. It's hard to triangulate it, but when we do, it's a moment of glory.
It really is. Yeah.
And a lot of lost balls, but still it's glorious.
That one time I did drive the green though.
Dude, yes. And it was worth it.
But then I followed it up with a 5-putt and double bogeyed.
Isn't that just how golf goes?
It's glorious, man.
Yeah.
My dad always told me just to have fun. No matter, you could be a pro if you wanted to, if you put in the work, sure. But at the end of the day, like golf is a game that you get to play for your whole life, unless, Lord forbid, you get paralyzed or something.
That's true.
That would suck. But like you get to play it with kids, grandkids, hopefully even. And so he was just like, just have fun. No matter where you are, you're taking a walk with the boys or girls or wherever, your family. And you get to hit some balls. So, and sometimes you get to play some really cool courses.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. No, I'm into it. Something I tell myself is that, it's not always totally acceptable to ask a buddy to go on a 4.5 hour walk in the park with you, but you can ask him to play golf with you.
Exactly. Exactly. And your wife is probably not going to allow you to just go walk with your buddy for 4 hours either.
Yeah, I don't know how golf gets the exemptions that it does. My aunt posted something recently. She's like, I'm going to start telling people I play golf just so I can get away and read for 5 hours. I was like, yeah, it sounds nice.
It really does put you in a place where people just understand that they're not going to reach you.
Can you imagine if like any other hobby, it's like, hey, I'm going to go eat lunch for 5 hours. I'm going to go.
I mean, the Europeans do that.
Yeah. Lucky.
Very lucky. They have like 3-hour lunches. I don't know how they get that.
Dude, they're just smarter than us, I think.
I fully accept it. Yeah. Maybe I'll move there someday. It's like back. It's like not on the top of the bucket list, but it's kind of like back there, It's like back in the backside of my brain.
Yeah, you got to have, tiers of backup plans.
Could be fun. Well, yeah, anyway, excited you're on. You wrote a book recently that I do want to plug. No shame at all. For those of you who are freelancers, this episode is for you. I brought him on specifically to kind of talk through things that freelancers struggle with. If you're not a freelancer and you're still interested in business or interested in just relating to people, honestly, continue to listen. It's going to be a good episode anyway. But go to Amazon. You have like an audiobook recording too, right?
Audiobook available anywhere you get audiobooks. Spotify, if you're a premium subscriber, you can listen to audiobooks.
I didn't know.
As part of your subscription.
I didn't know that.
If you didn't know that, it's on there.
There you go.
For no extra money. But also Audible, Apple Books. Ebook is available on Kindle. And then, of course, the paperback.
The paperback. It's the best one.
Yeah, that's
honestly.
right.
I don't read books much, but when I do, I read them.
Yeah, for real.
It's just a better experience.
Real ink and paper,
Sitting outside by the pool just on a day bed, read the book.
Vibes.
It's way better than, obviously, love your voice. But it's way better than listening to somebody, Yeah, you just get to read through and experience it yourself. Yeah. But anyway, pick the book up. There's a lot of really good tidbits of information about business, about freelancing, specifically how to do business as a freelancer, how to even come into the world as a freelancer, because I think that's something a lot of people don't know how to do. It's I think people think freelancing is just something where, hey, you do this thing, but business are going to hire you, but they're not going to respect you. And I think the way you go about things is you bring people an understanding that people can respect you. You can do business even at a high level, like bigger companies do, and you can more importantly relate to people, and even I think you jump into a lot of time management stuff too, which is really good for people. So yeah.
There's a big section about time management, sort of underneath the work-life balance section, but then there's 5 parts. It's getting started, pitching, client care, doing the work, and then work-life balance.
Yeah. And I binged it in about 5 hours the past 2 days.
That's great.
You can definitely read it really quickly.
Yeah. Short and sweet.
Were you always a writer, or was this something you've done recently? 'Cause it's one thing to like hop on a pod and just chat about stuff that you think you know about or you know about, but to sit down, take hours out of your days, weeks, months, and write something, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah. I wanted to write this book because books like this have been so impactful to me early on in my career, especially. When I started my freelance career, I was clueless about business, about marketing and sales and all this stuff. So I was at a low point financially, emotionally, and I finally was able to get rid of my pride, and I was like, okay, I need to figure something out because this ain't working. And I got a library card at the Venice Library, and I went over there and I checked out any book that I thought I could help me about marketing or business or sales and stuff like that. And those things impacted my career greatly, and they impacted my life a lot because of that. Yep. But what I realized when I was reading those books is that they weren't necessarily written for me as a freelancer. I had to triangulate information from books about sales and marketing and business and entrepreneurship and test out these lessons. Mm-hmm. Some lessons about entrepreneurship transfer over to a freelance business model, but some don't. Some lessons about startup transfer to a freelance business model, but some don't. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was learning all this stuff and it was helping me a lot, I didn't really feel like there was a book that I found that was written directly for freelancers and for that business model. So that's really what inspired me to write this book, was just a feeling that books helped me understand how to run my business and how to grow in my career so much. And I wanted to write something that could help people avoid the same mistakes that I made early on. And was really written for them as creative freelancers.
Well, it's great. I think you definitely accomplished that in what you did. So
thank you.
It's a big feat.
I appreciate it.
And for me, even as a freelancer, not even seasoned. Well,
depends
on what you say about season.
Depends on the season.
It depends on the season. It really does. I've been in it for 2.5 years now, fully into it. You could say like maybe 4.5, but I did work for a tech startup for a while as well. So that was my full-time gig. Which is something I want to talk about later, because something you hit on is having something that you're working in and then kind of pursuing the freelance world in addition to it, and creating stability as you're kind of in the instability part of freelancing. Yeah. Unstable. But I wanted to know like why you specifically chose freelancing, and even the stigma around it at the time in 2016 when you graduated college.
Yeah, definitely. I had an internship at an ad agency the semester before I graduated college.
Got it.
And it was great. It was awesome. I learned a lot. But what I realized, even though it was a small agency of maybe 10 or 12 people, was that there was a hierarchy of creativity. There were certain people who made most of the creative decisions and had most of the creative ideas. And then there were other people who just helped out, executed those ideas, and weren't really involved in that creative process. And so I wanted to be involved in that creative process, but I wasn't super confident based on what I saw at that moment that I could have a strong enough impact on the creative and be as involved in the creative development process as I wanted to be. So that was kind of the original inspiration. And, I think my view of the agency world or the brand world was a little short-sighted. Obviously, there are plenty of places where plenty of people can, execute their creative ideas and have creative ideas. But at the time, I was like, I want to be the one in charge of presenting these ideas, building these pitches, coming up with these creatives, and actually doing that stuff. I wanted to be closer to the heart of it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my original inspiration to start freelancing. Just out of college, I was freelancing as a social media manager for different brands and businesses. I'll go and, find music artists or small businesses or whatever and pitch them on social media management.
Yeah.
And then about a year into that, I realized that sort of felt kind of like a hamster wheel to me at that time of just like get content, post content, keep it going. Mm-hmm. And I also had met a number of people on the production side, the video or photo production side of that process. I would get content from them and talk about it with them and then publish it.
Yep.
And so that's kind of when I started to steer a little bit more towards the production side.
Why, when you were like in that ad agency and you said you didn't see yourself being able to have like a big enough voice when it came to the creative. Why was that? Like, was that just a media thing or you looked down the way 5-10 years down and you didn't see yourself in that position?
I think what I saw from that ad agency that I interned at was there were these high-level creative directors who steered the ship creatively.
Okay.
And there were others who, were just doing kind of what they were told creatively.
Got it.
So that to me was a bit like, well, why would I work for 4 or 5 years to try to get to that level where I'm calling the shots when I could at a different scale, obviously, and with fewer resources, but call the shots now. Yeah.
No, it makes total sense. I think I had like a similar moment when I was in college and coming out of college. I'm a college dropout, so I didn't even finish. But I think I just realized even with the tech startup, like I wanted to be in a place where creatively, yes, I was kind of in control and just someone who was giving input. But then also I was like in charge of my own time management and my own energy management and my own ability to like live life essentially. And that was like appealing to me. And I was like, all right, well, it's going to be 10 times harder, but I want to try it because if I do succeed at it, it means I will have that, and if I don't succeed at it, I'll just go back and try to get a job and do that route.
And we're back at it where it was before. So this is an idea I've been thinking about recently. It's not even in the book, but freelancing is such a rich, challenging experience. It challenges you in the exact way that you are deficient in. So if you are a freelancer and you struggle with time management, freelancing will expose that. If you struggle with money management, freelancing will expose that. If you struggle with pitching or negotiating, like freelancing requires so much of you and challenges so much of you. And ideally, you can bring things that you are really proficient at, really skilled at, and have an advantage in those areas. But that's also like, to me, there are no losses when you are a freelancer. No, obviously, maybe sometimes you got to go get a job, or maybe sometimes money's not coming in, or maybe it is hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. There's plenty of stories that I tell of it being extremely hard for me. But when you
washing dishes,
yes, exactly.
Heard about that one.
Yeah, but when you take a wider view at it, just the whole experience of trying to get out there, pitch your own projects, and make your own money, it's so challenging. It's such an enriching experience.
Yeah, most definitely. I wholeheartedly agree. Do you think if you are creative, you should be a freelancer?
I think everybody should freelance on some level.
Why is that?
For most of the reasons that I just explained. It's such a rich life experience, And it teaches you so much about yourself, about pitching, about sales, about negotiation, about trusting yourself, about believing yourself, etc. I'm not saying everyone should be a full-time freelancer.
Yep.
I'm not even saying it should be like a real part-time gig. But what I'm saying is the amount that you learn from just one time approaching somebody, offering them a service, pitching them on it, winning it, and then having to deliver that service. I mean, that is just such a challenging and rich experience, especially the first time that you do it. And I think it will bring a level of like appreciation and understanding to like anyone who tries it and who does it. Even just to make, an extra $200 like one weekend.
Yeah.
Like, that's so empowering and so exciting for people. So that's why I do think everyone should freelance, even if it's just once.
Mm-hmm. It's a good skill to have. I like what you said about even just making an extra $200 on a weekend. There's a part in your book where you talked about your friend who was in a fixed income, and he kind of like approached life in a way where he had this amount of income, and then he basically, in order to create a bigger margin, he basically thought about life on like scaling back and saving on certain ways. And he was at this ceiling where he only made this amount. He worked a certain amount of hours and made this amount, and then he had to save in order to create a bigger margin. And with the freelancing career, what I've experienced as well is, obviously in reason, but if you even are able to freelance on the side just a little bit, you could have that ceiling, but then you could bump that up as much as you want, depending on how much you can work, and if you're able to like increase the value of your product or offering, or increase the amount of times that you're able to do it, you could make an extra $1,000 a month, or an extra 15 or $2,000, however much, or even just another $500 and go get you a pair of Nike sneakers. Like it is empowering to be able to have that knowledge to say, hey, I don't really feel like, I have enough money this month. Let me go use this skill and make a little bit more so that I'm, back in the driver's seat a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, the way you just described it is exactly how I would describe it as well too. It's really exciting and empowering just to make a few extra bucks. I mean, so many people work jobs where they struggle to get raises. It's a big battle and a big fight and this big emotional upheaval to maybe, let's say, go from a $50,000 salary to a $55,000 salary or something like that. That's a big raise. That's a 10%, scenario. But, a $800 or $500 freelance project is like a small project in the world of freelancing. And that's totally achievable and attainable, I think, to anyone, not only who has a creative skill, but who has any kind of skill, speaking or, building or taking care of kids, like that kind of thing.
Cleaning a house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Consulting or helping people organize stuff, or anything like that. Like it's comparatively much easier to go win a couple $500, $1,000 projects and, and then kind of make up that difference that you were fighting so hard for in a traditional scenario.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And you might just find yourself in a place where your side hustle makes a little more than your main hustle, and then who knows, maybe you could step away.
Yeah, to make the jump.
To make the jump, and obviously, saying the obvious, being a freelancer, the word freelancing, it's not necessarily stable or like you're set to get that money every month, but it is exciting when you kind of like figure out the recipe for success there, and then it does become stable in a sense because you're able to repeat that process over and over again. It becomes second nature, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh, I just made $5,000 6 months in a row.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on track to make, about 60, 70K a year. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy to see that come together, because at first it can be so nerve-wracking for someone even thinking about potentially taking on less hours or like working as a freelance thing, because it's just not a guaranteed amount of money.
Yeah.
And so much of the world is set on guaranteed amounts of money. And I'm not saying that's bad at all. Obviously minimum wage and salaries and benefits, those are all very good things that help society progress for sure.
Yep.
But, to be able to get past that initial fear of like, well, this isn't sure, and then realize that it is just a business process to build trust with enough clients and to have enough lines in the water, so to speak, to where it does become somewhat or completely dependable for you.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you may not even have like the retainers, which is a freelancer word, but you may have enough projects that are fluctuating to where you're getting that consistent 3 to 4 every month, and maybe some a little bit more.
Yeah.
You mentioned building trust with clients. What does that look like? How do you do it?
Trust is one of those things that goes so far with clients. It does so much of the legwork and the heavy lifting as far as like helping you sell and helping you get rebooked.
Yeah.
But it's something that takes time to build. And the only way you build it is by consistently delivering your service or your product to them time and time again.
So
you can say
so
the
it's
day
not buying flowers for people.
that doesn't hurt.
No, not at all.
But trust,
Depending on the person, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. They could be allergic.
Could be. Do your research, I guess.
Yeah, no, it doesn't hurt in the networking sense to do those extra kinds of things, but there is no replacement for that trust, for someone knowing that they can depend on you to show up and to deliver something that helps them look good or make money. There's no replacement for that, and there's no real fast track to that. So that's kind of like what I tell people recently is a lot of people try to optimize their business for like profit. Like, how do I make more profit right now? They try to optimize it for speed. How do I speed this up? They try to optimize it for revenue. Like, how do we bring as much cash in the door? And all those things are great things to think about, but none of them are as important as optimizing your business for trust. Trust is the real thing that's going to get you the call back. That's the real thing that's going to keep people looking out for you. And it's the thing that's going to help you charge more without you even trying. If someone really trusts you and you might not be available, but they know they need you, they're going to pay more. They're going to say, please, can you come,
Yep.
So all that other stuff is great to optimize for: speed, profit, revenue, etc. But none of that is worth optimizing for at the expense of trust. To build that trust and to keep that trust with clients, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Is there any advice for people who like have trouble with delivering over and over again? Like, how do you get that to a place where you have a system in place where you can deliver things regularly on time and you're not kind of like struggling? Like, because obviously when you work for a company, they've already built those systems for you, But as a freelancer, you kind of have to do that yourself or find somewhere or somebody who's already done it for you. But you're still going to have to learn how to use those systems to basically come through for your clients. Do you have any like tips for that?
Yeah, that's something that I think everyone needs to figure out for themselves. Now, there is like a lot of good advice out there and a lot of good systems. I think that's part of the reason why productivity content and self-development content and like morning routine content is so popular right now, is because there's so many people now working in this non-traditional space, making their own money or like working on their own creative projects and realizing that they don't really know how to manage their time that well, or they don't have these systems in place that well. So there's no shortage of time management or scheduling or system operation content like in the world. There's a lot of good advice in the book here that I wrote as well too. But ultimately, the bigger point here is that yes, and it kind of goes back to the original thing we were talking about, is that freelancing will challenge you so much. If you struggle with time management or scheduling or systemizing, freelancing will challenge you and force you to create a system that works for you in that sense, because if you don't deliver, like that has direct financial implications on you, in the short term, and you can feel that pain almost immediately. Obviously, not delivering over the course of time in a traditional job does have negative side effects as well too, but it's not always that immediate, like
you can get away with it a little
hey,
bit
you're
here
dropped,
and there.
hey, you're off the project, hey, I don't want to pay you, like that's much
it's a tough
more
place
rare.
to be in.
Yeah.
The immediate repercussions will really like egg you on, either positively or negatively. To either make you quit or it'll make you dig deeper and grind it out a little bit more. When we're talking about freelancing, one thought that came to mind is, as you were talking about like the productivity, the like morning routine stuff, like all that content. There's a lot of like hustle and grind mentality out there. Do you think that's a good thing, bad thing? Obviously, maybe per person, but for the freelancer world, like what's an ideal situation to get yourself into?
The hustle and grind culture and the content that's out there, I think, is fine to a certain degree. A balance is really what's needed. You need to have consistent systems that have you showing up to work, consistently, putting lines in the water, doing outreach, taking care of your bills, and, making sure your systems are in place, right? And then there are times in your freelance career when an opportunity arises and you need to hustle to get it over the line. Like maybe you have a project going and then another project with an ideal client, a dream client comes to the table. You don't really have the time, but we've all been there, right? It's like, we got staying up till midnight. I'm getting this pitch out,
Been there.
Yeah. Or like I have these 2 projects and I'm going to, help outsource. If you have a little bit of that margin left in the tank to then really tap into that hustle side, then you can, push these projects over the line that really make a difference for your business. So I think both of that, both the consistency side and the hustle side are good, but within balance. I mean, if you're only focused on consistency and you aren't willing to do the hustle, like there's going to be a lot of good opportunities that pass you by.
Yep.
You just can't control when or where or how good opportunities come to you. You can't schedule them out perfectly. Sometimes,
unfortunately,
it's a take it or leave it thing, right? So if you don't have that hustle, a lot of opportunities are going to pass you by, and your business may not grow at the speed in which you need it to be rewarding enough for you to stick it out.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you only have hustle, you're listening to podcasts on every drive and you're saying no to every social opportunity and you're just only focused on your business, eventually something in your life will go off track. You won't have this consistent base. You won't have the finances in place, or you won't have the friendships in place to help keep you sane, and something will knock you off track.
It's real.
And then you'll get burnt out for 2 weeks or 2 months or a year, or you may decide this ain't for me, and quit. So I think having that balance between both is really what's essential.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about like delivering over and over and delivering on time and whatnot. I think something I've experienced is when I am in that hustle grind mentality, sure, maybe I deliver 1 project and maybe 2, but then that 3rd and 4th project end up being late, whether it's by 2 days or sometimes 2 weeks. And that really has strong implications on your client relationship as well. Because obviously, I think you mentioned this in the book too, like when you're dealing with the professional world, it's a little bit different than the art. Like you can't just take 3 extra days just to make something extra good. Maybe you could if you communicated with the client and they're like, oh, actually, we do want it to be that good. You have the extra 3 days. But if you just kind of like decide to do that, the client's probably going to be mad because they didn't get it when they wanted to. It's like super important to have that balance for sure.
Yeah. I mean, businesses are under constraints. They have deadlines for their product launches, deadlines for payroll, deadlines for taxes, and all this stuff. And if you're late just because you're trying to make it, a little bit better, or it doesn't quite feel right, or you're really trying to nail something, and they don't have their marketing asset for their product launch, that's a really big deal for them. That has like direct financial implications on them, So it is less, in many cases, as a freelancer and working with businesses, it is less about like this relationship, like let's make the most beautiful artistic thing possible. And it is often more about like what marketing assets do we need to drive the revenue to pay the bills.
Yep.
So, and then if you don't have the systems in place and you end up being late, that hurts them, and then they're not going to bring you back on.
Yep. And you mentioned something like, 95% versus 90% in your book. You were like, it could take you an extra 2 weeks to make something that's 95% there, but it could take you, 5 days to make something that's 90% there. And in reality, unless there's something where I found in my line of work, like unless there's something directly pertaining to the product or the, what's it called? The verbiage or the copyright of the company and what they're trying to do, they're probably not going to notice it. They're not going to notice, in the video world, if you use a wipe transition rather than, a fade transition here, they're more so going to notice, did he do what we asked him to do? Did he implement the things we asked him to implement? And so you mentioned the 95% versus 90%, where you could have, even if you communicate with that client and you're like, I can get a 95% there. You could use that extra 2 weeks to go secure 3 more clients or do 2 other projects that you can get to 90%, but rather you're kind of like worrying about that 5%, and it's losing you money and maybe even losing your relationships with clients too.
Yeah, totally. The example that I give in the book is like if a project takes you 10 hours, let's say a video edit, for example, 10 hours to get it 90% as good as it could be. And then it would take you another 20 hours to make it 95% or 98%. That's all fine and good. Like sometimes you really should make content that looks great or whatever. But it doesn't just necessarily impact the client. It also impacts your business. Because if it takes me 3 times as long to deliver something that the client doesn't really notice the difference on and maybe doesn't even affect their bottom line at all, but meanwhile, I'm spending 30 hours on something that should take me 10, I could be getting 2 more projects in that 30-hour window, hypothetically speaking, if the leads are there and that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not something that affects the client, but it also affects your business as a freelancer because you're directly incentivized to deliver a quality product as quickly as you can. Because if you can deliver more of those quality products in the same amount of time, you make more money.
100%. Yeah, and the quickness aspect too. Something popped on my mind I wanted to share in addition to your note about balancing like the hustle grind mentality with the consistency too. I think when you do have that ability to hustle grind at certain points and get things done quickly, or even extra quickly, then you have the ability to even leverage that for more money for yourself, for your business. I was in a situation back earlier this year and, the client approached me and they're like, hey, we need this done in 10 days. And it's a pretty massive project that would normally maybe take a month, 2 months, depending on the editors and everything. And I was like, yeah, like I think I can get that done. My team can get that done for you. But in order for us to do that, we're going to be dropping other projects to the side and personal stuff to the side. So, and we're going to be staying up till 4 a.m, multiple nights. So there's a price that you have to pay in order to get that expedited, And so because I knew and had confidence that we could get it done, then I had also confidence to throw that extra money on as well. And then, that conversation was had and they were like, yeah, I mean, we need to get it done. So let's do it. So it's like a win-win. It's like, I'm getting challenged. It's going to be hard, but we can get it done. But it's worth it for us because we're making a little bit extra money than we normally would on a project like that. And then they're in a place where they have confidence that because they're putting more money up front, that we're dropping things and we're prioritizing them to get it done.
And you're saving the day for them too, right?
Yeah.
Like not everyone would have that confidence to say, yeah, I can get it done on that timeline. And you're helping them, make something happen that maybe they didn't deserve to have happen.
100%.
Yeah.
You're saving them, making them look good when they maybe procrastinated on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've been there. I'm a big procrastinator, so it's something I'm constantly working about. Constantly working on it, man.
Yes.
You mentioned like in that hustle grind mentality too, people going down, a path where they get so involved in what they're doing that they don't cultivate relationships too. And I've talked about it. We've talked about it on this podcast before. We'd say created to create all the time, like we're created to create. What does that mean? We can get into that, but one of the big things it means is like we're called to cultivate relationships. Like that's a huge part of life. And especially in the freelance world, when you're not going into an office, and you're not having your work friends, you're not able to like push each other in what you're doing. You kind of have to build those friendships as well. And you call them industry friends in your book. Can you speak a little bit more about like what those are, but also how to get that and how to like build those relationships?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll share a little bit of like the mindset that I had about friendships and about industry friends and networking when I first came to become a freelancer. And that will maybe help bring this idea to life a little bit.
Let it rip.
I grew up in a suburb that was, pretty well tight-knit community, a lot of schools, a lot of sports, a lot of churches, et cetera. Grew up in the church as well, a lot too.
Okay.
And there was always like some lingering rhetoric about like, real friends versus fake friends, or like friends that like, church type friends versus friends that like, you just want to like, make money with that, or trying to like, get them to be a business, whatever.
Yeah.
All that is fine or whatever. But I think what it impressed upon me was like, I should only be focused on like real, genuine relationships And then relationships that are centered around business weren't authentic to begin with anyway, so I shouldn't really have to like worry about that stuff. Like this is just business, and I'm really going to focus all my attention on like these real authentic friendships.
You're there to get a job done, and that's it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I delineated this, and I don't really know like if I had a system for it. It's just more like a vibes thing of like, well, these are just people I work with, so I don't need to care about them. I don't need to like actually serve them. I'm just trying to, we're just trying to like get a job done kind of thing. Yeah. And then slowly, peculiarly,
that's a good word.
Well, I don't know if I said it right. Slowly and strangely, I started to discover myself having real friendships with people that I worked with, and it was so unexpected. And there were these tiny little unexpected blessings that I kept encountering along the way of being a freelancer. Was like, hey, we just started working together on this job. I just thought we were just going to be, whatever, kind of battling each other and trying to make projects happen. But now I love you, man. You know what I mean? Like
I don't know how to explain myself right now.
Yeah, it was so unexpected, and it was such an amazing thing. And then, if you really break that down and zoom out, the amount of time that we spend working, the amount of passion that we put into our work, it only makes sense that the people that we spend time with and the things that we're working on together, it only makes sense that we become close with these people.
Yeah.
So it was like an unexpected thing for me that sort of upended my original view of like, well, there are these authentic friends, and then there are like, people that you try to get money from, And it showed me that like, man, there are so many rich relationships to be had, not in spite of business, but because of business. I am meeting people that I never would have slated myself to go out and introduce myself to and become friends with. I'm learning from them. They're learning from me. We're becoming connected on a deeper level in ways that I wouldn't have gone out and met this kind of person, but here we are working together, and I see them more than my family. My extended family.
Well, extended family. There you go. Well, there's even a reason there's a joke, like a cliche joke about like having your like work family or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gets a little out of hand in the corporate world. It's like, oh, you're my like work brother, my work like husband,
my
it's
work
like,
wife.
That's a little weird.
That is weird.
But at the same time,
I think the sentiment
is there a little bit. Yeah, 100%. Now I don't know how you are with the church right now or where you're at, and so I don't want to get too heavy into that conversation if you don't want to. But something was interesting that you mentioned, because I think like in the American church, for me growing up at least, there was the sentiment that like you couldn't necessarily get that deep with people that weren't in the church or like weren't believing the same things that you were believing, because there would always be roadblocks. Can you kind of explain how you've not gotten around that, but like what you kind of experienced in getting close to people that you worked with? And maybe some of them did share the same values that you have, but obviously like somebody might hear that and be like, well, you should only like pursue the people in the church because they're the people that are going to like truly uplift you and keep you accountable.
Yeah, you just said in a much more direct way what I was sort of dancing around previously.
Got it.
It's like that exact language.
I was like, I knew I heard something. But.
Yeah, is that kind of that sort of language. Something that someone very close to me says now and again is that there's a difference between beliefs and values.
Okay.
And of course, if you are a person of a faith community or you go to a church, you would have a list of beliefs. Yep. And you all sort of like align on those beliefs, right? We say this, we don't say that. We do this, we don't do that. We believe this, we don't believe that.
Yep.
And then this person also says, there's a difference between beliefs and there's a difference between values. And values seem to me to be a little bit more malleable, a little bit more widely applicable. And I think this sometimes explains the tension that many people in our generation feel with people in older generations or younger generations of like, on paper, we believe the same things, but our values don't seem to be aligning here, like they're butting heads. And then meanwhile, you have people who on paper believe opposite things as you, maybe from a faith perspective or from a lifestyle perspective or something, but we get along so well, we connect so well because there's this deeper sense of values that are connecting us. So I don't want to make any grand claims about like what that means on a on a spiritual level. But I do want to say that that was an interesting thing that I've discovered over the years too, is like there were all these people that growing up in church, I was told like, you can't get along with them or you won't see eye to eye with them.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I do, and I have, and I've learned so much from them. Mm-hmm. So that's just been a really unexpected and beautiful part about living in Los Angeles and being in this world and being kind of forced in a good way to interact with people who, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't have pointed out and said, I'm going to be your friend. We're going to get along, just fine. Yeah. But we do. So it's interesting.
Definitely super interesting. And for you personally, like, has that, like, even, is that like helped or like hurt your faith? And I don't really understand like where exactly you are, because we haven't really got this deep yet. So this is a first timer for us. But is that something where, because again, like people would tell me, don't be friends with this person, because, you are who you hang out with, and, they're going to take you down a dark path or whatever. And I've also realized like becoming friends with people that don't necessarily have the same beliefs as me, obviously there's certain discernment there, it's like for me personally, if I'm becoming friends with somebody and they're constantly wanting me to go to a strip club with them, like I don't personally want to go to a strip club. It's not really in my belief system or values. Yeah. And so like, I'm like, maybe not. But it doesn't mean like I wouldn't be friends with them and still go get a beer with them, But for you personally, I guess, like, how has that shaped you, or even shaped like your beliefs now?
Yeah, definitely. I will preface this by saying, I think it is very important to spend time with people who have the same faith beliefs as you. Yeah. Because there is a certain level of way that you see the world, and they can help you continue to see it that way. They can help you, discern certain things in your life. They can help you keep the faith.
Building each other up, iron sharpening iron. Yeah.
That said, another really surprising thing that I've come to discover after moving to Los Angeles out of the suburbs is that I have come to a much stronger respect of any person of any faith, because living here and trying to keep my own faith, I've understood how difficult it is, and how many things in our modern culture try to pull us away from these faith traditions and from these beliefs that we know deep down really are true on a deep, deep level, and they help us and they draw us closer, to God. But I've understood now that it's so difficult to keep those beliefs. So that's been also an unexpected, interesting thing that I've discovered in meeting people who believe different things than me, who have different faith traditions than I do. Is growing up, it was like, don't talk to that person. They're going to lead you astray. And now it's almost like I see them. I'm like, hey, like, we don't believe the same things, but like I see you. And like, I know what you're going through on some level, because I know how hard it is to keep a faith in the modern culture, especially in a specific locational, geographical, demographic culture that doesn't reward you socially for having that 100%. Faith.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of people in America experience living in suburbs is that they are in geographical locations that do reward them socially for having that faith. So,
especially if you're in a place where somebody has built up a city based around a specific faith.
Yeah, exactly. If those churches are, formidable economic forces in a city, in a place, then it kind of becomes that way.
Go to Utah, and being a Mormon is going to help you probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Being in the Mormon church is going to actually like push you forward.
Yeah, and I went to a Christian college. And I don't want to come across sounding like I'm exempt from
this.
For
sure.
There were
what
many,
college did you go to, by the way?
I went to Azusa Pacific University.
Okay, cool.
It's just
down the street
of LA. Yeah, down the street.
2 hour maybe.
Hour or so. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say that I'm exempt from this or better than anybody else who's leveraging their faith for social gain, because I think that was like a huge chunk of my college career, which is something I try to reconcile now. Is like, the faith that I now try to cling to is much more nuanced than kind of what I was using it for at the beginning, which was like, hey, I say these things, I believe these things, I do these things. I'm good, right? Like I'm cool, right? Like
wink, wink.
Like I'm I'm deep, right? You know what I mean?
Oh, sheesh.
Yeah. So that's a pretty roundabout way of saying it. But I think your original question was like, what have been some interesting or unexpected things that, I've learned like in that sense. So that's kind of, one thing. That's just roundabout way of saying I've learned a lot. I've changed a lot.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm learning that it's a good thing when I'm asked a question and I can't necessarily answer it right away or like poignantly right away. I'm like, that's not me not knowing what to say. It's just like there are so many ways that I could answer it or more so like so many examples that I could give to answer it, and I can't necessarily track one down because there have been so many. So I'm like learning it's not a bad thing to even take a minute and like mull something over or just not have the perfect way of explaining it right off the bat,
I think that is a boiled down version of wisdom that you just described. Because
praise God.
No, like because we especially in our modern culture like are being pulled to have specific opinions about everything.
Yeah.
And the reality is that so many of these issues and so many of the things that we encounter are so much more complex. And it is what you just described, that process of taking a moment, considering how should I describe this? How should this be spoken about? What's helpful here? That's wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Wisdom, discernment. I think that comes straight from the Holy Spirit personally. I think your relationship with God really just like you dig deep with that, you're going to get more wisdom, especially if you ask for it. I was talking with a friend the other day and she was saying the exact same thing. It's like, just ask for wisdom every day and God will give it to you. You know? And seek him through the word and he'll definitely give it to you.
I love that. I mean, something I've been thinking about recently in a similar train of thought is like waking up and asking for wisdom, like you just described, or waking up and asking for grace, or waking up and asking for strength, or or forgiveness, or something. Because what I've come to accept and try to accept more and more every day is that like when I wake up, my knee-jerk reaction, the path I'm already on, is towards selfishness. My knee-jerk reaction is like, how do I, so it's like even just waking up and saying, okay, I'm going to steer that way automatically today. So let's just like try to yank the wheel a little bit and ask for this wisdom and ask for this grace, ask for this forgiveness in advance because I'm headed the other way.
Keyword. I mean, even like you were saying, like, I think that's wisdom in and of itself too, is realizing it's like wisdom isn't this like grand thing that you ask for and it makes you like rich and like famous and like all this stuff. Wisdom is you asking for sanctification at the end of the day. It's like you're asking God for one, the realization that you can't like do things by yourself and you need help. And then you're asking him for that help. And it's like like you said, it's a daily thing. I think when I don't wake up and do that, my days are just even a little bit more rough than they could have been or would have been. And when I do, it's just like so cool to put yourself in that position. Yeah, headspace. You could say it's just meditation or headspace. But I personally believe like when you do put yourself in that position with God in tandem in relationship, then you get to a point where, you are taking things in every day and then you're like, okay, okay, now I can like go again and go about this the right way when normally I probably wouldn't because I don't have the strength and or mindset to do it. Yeah. I didn't know we were going to get deep in faith. I mean, obviously this is like,
anytime,
I love talking about this stuff. But now I got to bring this up because I read it in your acknowledgements and it's so cool. That you mentioned him because I love John Bellion as well.
Oh, I know where you're going.
But I'm like curious to understand like your outlook a little bit more because it was cool to read this and then even hearing you talk about just where you're at with like your walk and where you're at with the pursuit of like relationship with God too. It's cool how you use this quote because I love this quote by him as well. basically you said, I'll just read the whole acknowledgement and then kind of showcase what you said. You said, "Thank you to God, the creator, for creating me and placing me in such a wonderful scenario in my life, for sustaining my very breath every single day. As John Bellion once wrote, too many coincidences and instances of God's hand. It's insane. I thought my way to greatness. I could claim this, but he gave me the brain. Each day I've spent on this earth has been a glorious gift, a harvest festival, thousands of blessings, all of them created and arranged by your hand." Yeah, I think that's just like such a powerful outlook, because there are a lot of people that are just like, oh, well, like God did that, God did that, God did that. And it's so lazy in my mind to just be like, oh, God did it, I didn't do anything. When in reality, you did do things, but you did it because he created you and because he gave you the ability to do it. And that alone is so graceful, but at the same time, he's putting responsibility on us. So it's cool that you acknowledge that. But yeah, I just wanted to know kind of even more so how you go about thinking, one, why you're on the earth, and two, like what you do with that information and even how you have purpose in life.
Yeah, totally. Well, what you just described earlier before the question was like about, being placed on this earth to, being created to create. Yeah. It reminds me a bit of the parable of the talents, which is, I think Jesus told a story where there were a few people who were given talents, which I think were sums of money. I think they were,
yeah. In that
but
story,
obviously that word,
can mean so many different things.
In our culture means other things too. And, one person buried the money underground and didn't invest it. One person invested it a little bit. One person invested it a lot. And then, the time comes for them to give the money back and to show what they did with it. And two of them were able to say, this is what I was able to do with it. And then, one of them had to say, I just buried it underground. I didn't grow it at all.
Yep.
So it's an interesting parable that's in the Bible that Jesus told. And it kind of reminds me of this moment. And I feel a weight to bring a level of education and empowerment and encouragement to people. Before I wrote this book, it was like almost a sickening weight upon my shoulders. I could feel it in my throat almost, where like I came to the moment where I realized I need to write this book, and it's going to be really hard. I'm going to have to dig through stories that I don't want to dig through. I'm going to have to put in a lot of hours in between trying to make money. But I knew that I was at this point for myself personally and maybe even spiritually that like I knew that I needed to do this with this following season of my life. And I don't want to tell that story and claim like, oh yeah, like I nailed it. Because the reason I felt that weight and the reason that I knew it was going to be so hard is because there were so many other moments just like that in my life where I felt like I had to do something, where I knew what the right thing to do was and I didn't do it. Where I knew that like, I could get started on this, and I got started, and then I fell off the path of doing things. Yep. So I don't want to make the writing of this book seem overly spiritual. I don't want to say that it's, any divine inspiration or anything like that. But I know for me personally, I had been placed in such a great position in my life. I have really good education. I have really solid emotional foundation in my life. I have so many of these skills. I know how to market. I know how to, and it just was like the story was writing itself in the sense of like, this is what you got to do. There's all these things that have led you to this position. And I do believe I'm on this earth to help encourage and educate and empower people in this specific tiny slice of history that we live in, just to help make someone's life better, someone else's life better. So, I did feel that way. I maybe have lost track of your original question now, but that's a little bit of a story of kind of like how this came to be, and I think maybe answers the question originally of like what I feel like I'm called to create.
Yeah. No, I answered it perfectly, dude. Right on the money. I think it's such a beautiful thing to realize like you have a purpose. It, like you said, it's very hard to realize, and it's very hard to realize what that purpose is. but when you do have that conviction, it's like paramount that you do run towards it. I mean, it's why I literally started this podcast, because one, I knew I needed all this reminder and conversation to keep me going. But two, I was just like, there's got to be people out there that need that same encouragement. You know, I think it's the biggest goal that I have with this podcast is, you know, obviously provide resources like this to people that need it, and bridge the gap between people who are looking for some type of encouragement, and the people who can give it to them, and the conversations that can be had. But at the same time, you know, we're all called to do something special, and that doesn't mean we're all going to make rockets and send them to Mars like Elon Musk. But, you know, that's a man who found his purpose and seems to be his passion, and he ran after it. And I'm sure it wasn't easy at all for him either. And so for you, like, realizing that and having that gut feeling, that deepness, like, in your soul to realize that you were put on this earth for a reason, and you were put on this earth by God for a reason, is super important. And that's what I like try every day to pursue after myself, you know, and try as much as I can to like encourage other people too. I definitely kind of resonate with that feeling of deep conviction and then not doing anything about it. And for me, like, there was a point too where, you know, I felt that conviction again and felt like the peace that came along with it, you know, and like you were saying, like, it was the right thing to do. And the moment I started to like step out even a little bit in faith in those moments, whether it was like, you know, hey, you hurt this person's feelings, you should go and talk to them, even though 5 friends that you talked to said you shouldn't because it would be too much drama. You have the conviction, so go do it, and do it boldly and do it gently and kindly. But you not doing that is just going to prolong hurt for somebody else and probably yourself too, you know? And so it's whether it's something like that or whether it's like, hey, write a book. Like, both of those things are in tandem with each other. And there's such a wide spectrum of like moments that I have in my life where I have that gut feeling. And the more you use it and the more you do something about it when you feel it, I believe the more you jump into and step into that purpose that you're called to do, whatever it is. And I think that gut feeling is like the Holy Spirit as well. It's like, it is God pushing you to be like, hey, I didn't just put you on this earth to twiddle your thumbs. I put you on this earth to like be a difference maker in relationships and in business and in creativity and like maybe politics, whatever it is, you know?
I'm so glad you're saying this, because there was a time in my life whenever people would talk about calling or like what they were put on the earth to do, or like feeling like, you know, God was calling them to do something, that I was very confused and discouraged because I didn't know what that specific thing was for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing on the earth, you know? And I remember thinking and saying to people like, just tell me to do anything.
Yeah.
Let me hear an audible voice, God, like, tell me to do anything. It could be insane. But if I had the confidence that like, oh, this specifically is what you know, am supposed to be doing, then I would go and do it. And I think looking back on that, I was misinterpreting a similar conversation that we were just having now. Mm. And it was a little bit misguided, because there are so few moments in the Bible, maybe none, that tell us like, okay, make a film or like write a book or like go and, you know, do this or do anything specific, you know? And I mean, this is maybe a little off track, but like, I don't think God much cares exactly what we do, but there's so many moments in the Bible that are like, give us very clear direction on forgiveness and on love and on patience, you know, and on all these things. And it's like what you just described about feeling that, like that tug of the Holy Spirit or that aching, you know, of your conscience or something is like that is just the same as this tug. Like there's so many opportunities to do the right thing, to do what's right. One of the writers who I love the most, his name is Ryan Holiday. He just wrote a book called Right Thing, Right Now. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. He just, you know, discusses a myriad of examples of people who like went out and did a difficult but thing that they thought was right in the moment. Really fascinating read. But even just the title of that, I think, is a perfect description of what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right thing, right now.
Yep.
And so if you're at a point in your creative career or in your life where you don't exactly know, should I write a book or should I make a movie or should I start a podcast or should I write a blog? That is a byproduct that will sort itself out later.
Yep.
What we need to focus on right now is like, what do I feel the tug on my heart to do right now? How can I help somebody right now? Mm-hmm. What am I interested in right now? Because I don't think God is going to lay in front of us like, hey, here's the roadmap of like all your career moves that you need to make. Boom, 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 boom. But he is going to lay in front of us a lot of opportunities to do what's right, to do his will, to make the world a better place.
Yeah, 100%. You hear about people talking retrospectively about life all the time. They're like, oh, I trusted God, like, and little after little, I looked back and I saw the roadmap, And I think the beautiful thing about living with a relationship with Jesus, living with Jesus, is like, he's not going to lay the whole roadmap out, but he has the roadmap. And he's guiding you through it. Yeah. So like saying yes right now, doing the right thing right now, like you're saying, like it's putting you in a position where I don't know how to say this. In a way, a small way, it's a cheat code in life. Because it
just shows you the next thing to jump to, right?
Boom, do this, cool. Do that, cool. Do this, cool. And the more you understand the way that God speaks to you, and then the more you say yes to it, the easier it becomes to realize that voice, and the easier it becomes to say yes to it, And you'll never be perfect, ever, but it's really cool to be able to, line up those obediences, line up those yeses, and most of the time immediately get to enjoy the joy that comes along with it. And even sometimes immediately get to enjoy like healing that comes from it. And just more fulfillment, more purpose. Not everything, especially relationships. Relationships are hard. But even I've experienced times where, I'm like being told to do something, being told to, I'll give you a specific example. I'm one of 10 kids. I don't know if you knew that. So I have 6 sisters, 4 younger. And, for a lot of my life, like I never truly expressed explicitly to anybody in my family, let alone my sisters, that they're beautiful, that they're loved, that they have a purpose, but even just like that I acknowledge them and see them. And it was like weighing so heavily on my heart to like tell my younger sister that. And just realizing that like I had never said really like fully, that I thought she was beautiful, that I thought she was like worthy of love, that I loved her, that I cared deeply for her, even though I felt those things. And I realized that like my family doesn't necessarily have that embedded in us. The guys in our family don't really do that. And I started to realize like the effect that it has on my sisters. And so I didn't do it for a while. And then one night, like, I'm back home, we're, sitting, working, it's like late at night. And I just get this massive tug on my heart to do it. And it took me 2 hours to say the simple words like, wow. Yo, Abigail, you're beautiful. Like, I just wanted to let you know that like, I think that, and I've never like explicitly said that. And bro, like I couldn't even finish the sentence before she started just like breaking out, crying, breaking down, because of how much like those words impacted her. And, to be able to like be in a moment of grace and just realize like, I've put this off my entire life, and I've been the one who has had the power to empower my sister for this long, and I've not done it. Yet, as soon as like I obeyed and did that, it was immediate like healing for her, for me. It was immediate joy to like be in that moment with her and break down that wall. And I think so many times like I did, like we just put things off. We allow social pressure to get to us, to not do something that we know without a shadow of a doubt is right. But we just like won't do it because we're afraid of like such small things that would happen to us if we did.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story, dude. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's awesome. And that's just like such a perfect example of what we've that idea we've just been talking about. It's like such a simple thing to go to a family member and say, "You're beautiful. I love you."
Yep. So simple.
So much in life gets in the way of that stuff, right? So many emotional blocks or social blocks or familial things or schedules and locations and politics. Yeah, all this stuff, right? But you knew deep down in your heart, like, this is the right thing for me to do.
Yeah.
And you did that. And like, how beautiful is that? So I feel like, for folks who are listening, I think like this is the process that we're talking about. It's less about like, what exactly am I going to do? And what is my exact next career move? But it really is like, what is the right thing for us to do today? Yep. I think what you telling that story just made me think of like, oh man, like the things I've felt in my heart that have been right that I haven't done, and how simple they are and how meaningful they could be, It's just 100%. Push the pride aside or something, that's awesome. I really appreciate you telling that story.
Yeah, 100%. And even to bring it back to like the freelancing thing too, you may not be called to like start a business officially, start an LLC, do your thing. But, even if you have an inkling of, hey, you know what? Like I've been working this job. I went to college for this and I've been doing it, and it may not even be something that's extremely stressful for you. But you have this inkling to like just do that better, relate to people better, care about people better, or even pick up something different because you feel like that's going to lead you down a road that puts you in better places and better rooms to care about people better and to love people better. Then explore that, I think, like see what it means to pick up that hobby, and, put a few extra hours in a week to try to grow that skill and see if that like leads you down the road to do something. Because, in reality, like you said something about like, it's almost like God doesn't care what we do. It's all like, and it's the way I view it. It's like my career is like a tool used by God to put me in specific rooms with people and then do the right thing at the right time. And I think, even if you decide to pick up a camera to, pursue a career in photography, maybe you won't get down the road and make that a full-time thing, but maybe just the fact that you chose to use that gift that you realized you had and grow it, put you in a position where you got to bring joy to a lot of people's lives through using that camera, not necessarily even through just shooting photos, which that will bring joy to people, but even just the conversations that you have through that job and through that hobby, like it's going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a philosophy that I try to take to my work a lot too. I make produce a lot of commercials and digital ads, and it can be a little demoralizing sometimes because, especially in the social media age, I work for 6-8 weeks on a project, and then finally, stressing out and my hair's falling out, and, and it finally goes live, and then 3 months later it's irrelevant.
It doesn't matter.
And so it's like I put so much stock into like, what am I supposed to be doing, and like, is this meaningful, and like, is this great? But what I've come to accept now is like, man, that stuff's gonna be meaningless in 3 months anyway. What is meaningful? It's meaningful that I bring a strong sense of passion to this work. It's meaningful that I make people's lives on set enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It's meaningful that people can see a difference in the way that I work. It's meaningful that I try to pay people early, that I try to pay people well, that I try to help them advance. It's meaningful that I create a good living and work environment for the people who are put in my sphere at this moment in time. That's what's actually meaningful in this. So, I mean, that's also just another specific example of this whole, like, how do you find out what you're supposed to do or whatever? It's like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I'm so glad we got into that conversation too, because I think it's like, when you boil everything down, like that is the most important thing. When you really think about life. Yeah. When you think deeply. Just kidding. That was an
callback.
Yeah, callback. It's a callback to the whole church friends thing.
That's right. We are deep guys, though.
We're deep guys, dude. No, it's
see me as deep.
Genuinely, I think like genuinely, it's been a joy to even just like hear your takes on things and kind of grow deeper with you in this conversation.
Likewise, bro.
I didn't
awesome.
Didn't really know exactly like where you were at with things and how you thought about life, and it's cool to kind of connect with you on that. And I don't know, it's just such a beautiful way to look at life.
Thank you, man. Yeah. No, it's been great to talk about this stuff with you as well. And it's cool that you're creating this space where folks can do that. I think a lot of podcasts, maybe these kind of topics would come up, but it's like, are we going to go there? Are we going to dance around it? So I think it's cool that you've kind of created this space that where kind of anything is fair game. That's awesome.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I think I've, had a lot of doubts and definitely listened to my fair share of lies throughout the process of like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Like, it's not, people aren't gonna like it. It's not necessarily like a good thing to force people to talk about their feelings or whatever. But I think, I've come to realize like it's needed like for people. And, I by no means want to ever force that on people, but I want to, open up the door and give them a space where they feel comfortable to do so, and I think like a big part of that is having, the love of Jesus involved through me, hopefully, prayerfully, and just like having a place that's covered by the Holy Spirit and just allowing that to happen. I'm not like wanting every single person that I talk to on this to be Christian, but I think, like you said, it's like having a space where people can talk about that openly. Especially in the creative industry and in LA too. I've definitely had that strong conviction that you were talking about to do so.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, faith is a journey.
Yeah.
And, even as someone who's been a Christian their whole life, I've experienced my fair share of ups and downs, and I'm sure I will continue to experience a fair share of ups and downs. But it seems like you see this as just a nice pit stop, a nice warm tavern on the journey of faith.
Warm tavern,
and I think
I'm gonna place that on the bottom of the sign. Welcome to the tavern.
Welcome to the tavern.
Amazing.
Where you can shine that light and be a safe, warm space for people. I think is beautiful.
100%. Appreciate it, bro. One last question before we hop off.
Let's do it.
I ask everybody, what does it mean to you specifically to be creative?
Good question. This is the hardest question yet.
Saved it for the last.
Yeah.
Best for last, as they say.
To me, the feeling of seeing something that was once just a little idea in the back of my mind become a real physical thing, an object or a song or a file, a video or something, that is so exhilarating. So to be creative to me, I mean, on any level, is just an exciting way to live life. The other day I was cooking, and I don't do a lot of cooking, but I saw some ingredients that I thought maybe might go well together, splashed them in the pot.
Hey, there you go.
And it was okay,
There you go.
But just the feeling of like having the idea, having the confidence to grab the soy sauce and the fish sauce and try it out, like that's just exciting. And then it became a real physical thing. Mm-hmm. And then obviously on the bigger level, creating commercials and writing books and that kind of thing is just really empowering and exciting. So to me, to be creative is just an exciting way to live life. There's a little bit of risk involved, It could be bad.
Definitely could be.
My wife might not think that the dinner I made was as good as I think it was. But I had a great time doing it. So to me, that's what being creative is. It's like, what an exciting way to live life.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Brown sugar.
Yeah.
Try that next time.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Especially with Italian.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just
Okay, just mix it in.
dude, with the sauce, just
Dude, you planted a seed in the back of my mind.
let me know.
It'll come to life someday.
It's a game changer for me. Not a lot of people know that I use that, and now I'm putting it out in the public.
Oh.
I can't make my own secret recipes anymore. Sorry.
You can bleep out the ingredient, the brown sugar.
I could. Yeah, we'll make a call later. If it's bleeped out, I'm sorry, guys. I just had to. It's my own thing, you know.
Hey, we gotta respect it.
But it'll add a little spice, bro.
Ooh.
Yeah, it'll make it real good. Yep.
Excellent.
Dude, well, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Ben.
You got a baseball game to get to, don't you?
Yeah, I'm playing slow pitch softball in 47
yeah.
minutes.
Dude, go hit a homer for me.
Dude, that's the goal. That's the goal.
Have you hit any this year?
Yes, but we don't play with fences. So if you gap
okay.
one and have speed,
You can get it
you
inside
can get
the
around.
park.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
makes
So I've done that a couple times.
It's like when you're younger, you're playing kickball.
Exactly.
There's never really a true home run,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you can get it
But
fast.
it's still a home run.
Yeah,
Count it.
very true. Well, dude, hopefully we get to play some golf soon.
Yes.
Get back on the links.
Anytime.
Let's do it. But yeah, I appreciate you, and I'm excited to watch you continue to help people, bro.
Thank you.
It's cool to watch.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. Tune in for the next episode. That's it. Peace.